Good afternoon. Hope you can hear me okay. Just to let you know on how we trade, chart patterns are a big deal in companion stocks. And we're going to go over buyback stuff. And that's why you can't be that bearish in here. And I'll be happy to go over that. So, what are we talking about? We're talking about that. Number one, you get buybacks 5 weeks prior to earnings. You start getting the buyback blackout. This is supposed to be about that. And that's why sell-offs on bad news are just not going to be that big a deal. That's why a lot of people on the internet are talking about, oh, there's a rebalance the end of the month because of 50-50 funds. So we'll go over all that. Number one, though, this is why we shorted the market. We shorted because of the ledge. So that's a Brecher ledge when you get a sell-off and a consolidation. That's over now. It was there. So a sell-off and a consolidation and nothing underneath. So that worked. So that was pretty good. Also, we do companion stuff, and I'll go over that later. I'm on a long time in here. So the first thing I want you to see in here, though, that I think is a big deal is about buybacks, and I told you I'd talk about that. So companies, it's not all at one time. It usually starts with JP Morgan. It's 35 days prior to earnings. 35 days prior to earnings. There you go. 35 days prior to earnings, most companies voluntarily don't buy back stock. So that's that area. So when you look at JP Morgan, what's it done? Usually when the buyback starts, it starts going down a little. It doesn't mean it has to go down. It means that bad news is more likely to hit it. Or let's put it this way, it underperforms the broad market. So that's JP Morgan's. That's your buyback blackout area. 35 days prior to earnings. So if you take into this one and go to here, that's here. What did it do? It went down. When is the next one? The next one, the buyback blackout. And why does it matter? Because right now, a lot of people are talking about the underperformance of bonds versus stocks in May. And usually that leads to funds selling stocks. And that's true. But you have the companies able to sop it up. So 35 days gets you to June 11th. That's your buyback blackout for JP Morgan. So here, I'll be happy to share this. And it's been working. I mean, if any of you do the 1550 trade, you know that it's been working. So, which is pretty exciting. Now, getting to this, and that's why this rebalance, does it could go down, things could go down, but I'm just telling you, they don't stay down that long. That's a problem. Now, you might ask, well, why is the Russell on the upper right going down? Because they don't have buybacks, most of the growth-oriented stocks. So that's why that's happening. So keep that in mind. Now, I'll show you a couple of other things. Oh, number one, that's JP Morgan. Now we're going to take Apple. Apple is usually the last one. So we'll take this. And we'll take 35 days. So you'll see it's around, it's 34 I put in, but that's like June 16th. So that zone, it's a little earlier this time, but that zone between, let's say, June 10th and then when Apple can start buying back, which is in that area, like at the end of July. That zone is when the preponderance of S&P stocks aren't buying back stock, which means that's when bad news or bad charts are more likely to work. That's why right now, when you saw the SPX have this little dump in here, right in here, it came right back because companies can buy back stock. Now, that doesn't mean it's going, they'll go straight up for days, and we have longs and shorts, but I'm just telling you that you have to take advantage of that. Now, how about Amazon? What's Amazon doing? It's doing nothing. So Amazon doesn't have a buyback, but it's doing nothing. Apple has a buyback, and you might ask, well, why is it going down? I think it's going down because they're worried they're going to have to build some factories and stuff. That maybe the tariffs are still going to be draconian. That's the only thing I can figure out of why it's acting so poorly. So, I mean, in there. Now, Visa has a buyback, and the stock's holding up. So, what's happened in the last 10 minutes every day? So, I don't know if a lot of you look at this with the 1550 trade, but go and check out what happens. That's when companies can't buy back stock. So, it's Rule 10b-19. And 10b-19 says that companies they can't buy the opening, they can't buy the last 10 minutes. So, and you'll see what's happened. So give me 1 second. So watch what happened yesterday at the end of the day. That's 1550. Check that out right there. So if Visa's going down and a lot of S&P stocks can't buy back stock, what do you think happens the end of the day? There you go. 1550 right here. Right there. And as you see, and we've been taking advantage of that. I've watched more sites that are buying at 1550. I don't understand that. The market's been propped up by companies buying back stock. So when they can't buy back stock, it's more likely to have a sell-off. Or let's put it this way. That little bear flag is more likely to work when companies can't prop it up. So, and that's what's happening. So, in there. And that's not a one-off. This has happened every day. And I can't tell you, there was somebody on our site that actually did the opposite, was buying something in here. And I can't, it's things can go either way. But I'm just telling you, I was not, I just felt bad because I'm like, you got to play it the other way if you're going to take a shot. So, I mean, that's the way I look at it. So where do we go now with the markets? Well, the first thing is I wanted to show you all that buyback stuff. The next is something like that at the end of the day. Now, the problem at the end of the day is that it might be illiquid. So what I mean by that is if you buy a put in Visa and it does that, it goes down a point in like 10 minutes, they might make the markets real wide on the puts. Now, we like playing them on Friday because sometimes the puts are like 0 and all of a sudden they go to $1. But I would rather play the SPX or the XSP, which is 1/10 of the SPX, because it's cash settled. So if it takes a dive, yeah, it's cash settled. And you don't have to do a thing. And if you do buy a put, and it doesn't guarantee it's going to close on the low, but if you don't want to sell it, you don't lose a day trade. So, definitely keep that in mind. So that's why you play that buyback thing. So let me just show you, though, on another thing that works with it. The reason it worked yesterday is you could just feel it yesterday. You could feel that the markets were going up, or let's put it this way, they were selling off a bit right here. The individual stocks were going up. So you see on how you sold off right here. Sold off right here. Right in there. So you sold off right in there. But there were some stocks that inexplicably were up here. So check out Microsoft. So Microsoft started rallying when the market was selling off, and then it sold off. So how about Netflix? Well, Netflix is its own entity. How about Apple? Well, Apple did the same thing. Look at that. All day when the S&P was doing this, Apple was doing that until the close. Look at that. Right there. So just put this side by side. And the reason I'm showing you this is so you can sort of get a feel of which stock seems like they're buying back stock. So just go and take Apple on the left and go and take the SPX on the right. You'll see it in here. I think you'll see it. So what you see in here, and I'm talking about yesterday, and you're going to see that when the S&P was trending down. So look what Apple was doing. It was trending up. So even though this was going down, this was holding up, like mysteriously holding up. So that's why that was one we wanted to pick on. If something isn't rallying, then they're probably not buying back stock. So that's not the one you want to do. So I just want you to know that there's a time and a place to play them. So how about, well, I'll show you. Here's a list of some stocks that have big old buybacks. So big buybacks. I just call it buyback big. And it doesn't mean they're buying it back right now. It just means that these are ones I watch. So Airbnb is in there, believe it or not. Let me put them in here. And I'm always adding some other ones. So I just want you to know that. But let me copy and paste this so you have it. Let me see if I can get it to work. All right. So let's put this in here so you have it. There. That's just some of them. Just wanting to let you have some of them. So that's one thing we're watching is some of the buyback ones. Now, there's another thing that's pretty interesting that you could do in here. And one of them is to go to tip ranks, believe it or not, and put in tip ranks buyback. This is just something I found. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Let's see if I can find it. I had the link earlier, and I think I erased it. So let's see. No, I have it, and I'll show you. So now in this, I don't know how tip ranks works. I don't know where the link is for this. No, not the calendar one. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about each one, individual stock. Thanks anyway, but here, I'll show you. There. And what you do in there is then you go through, and like I said, I don't know the link within tip ranks, but just go to the web address here. And you'll see like Airbnb has bought last quarter 800 million. You see they bought 800 million. Now go into here and you'll see like COF. Just put it in between those little slanty thingies. There. They bought back 374 million. Now go put in Visa. $4 billion. So guess what stock acted the best relative to each other? So go and look. So you'll see Capital One is here. Not even close to a high. But now go put in Visa. And you'll see Visa, where is it relative to Capital One? It's at a new high. And Capital One isn't even close. Now, Capital One bought Discover, so there could be some stock stuff in here, but I still find that fascinating. So, and I'm just telling you, you can go into like Airbnb, you saw had a lot. Go into here and you can put like JP Morgan versus Goldman Sachs. Oh, I took out the slanty thingy. There. 7 billion. Holy cow. So guess which one probably does the same thing. So, that JP Morgan has outperformed some of the other banks. Go and put in Goldman Sachs. 2 billion. Yeah, look at that. Two JP Morgan, 7 billion, Goldman Sachs, 2 billion. Which one do you think is held up better? Yep, JP Morgan. A lot better. So just want to show you on how that works in there. So pretty neat. Now, a lot of people are asking me about rebalance stuff. So rebalance is funds have there are a lot of different rebalance times. There's one at the third Friday of the month every quarter. That's the S&P rebalance. And that's at the last minute on the third Friday of the month. There's a monthly, and a quarterly rebalance for funds, like a 50-50 fund. So you're going to find that there's some 50-50 funds that are going to be, way long stocks. So I'll show you what we're talking about. Here's the SPX since May 1st. And on the right is the TLT. Now, I've mentioned the TLT is in a bear market. Just keep that in the back of your head. But let's just take May 1st. Now, I don't buy bonds because of a rebalance. And the reason is because there's so many different kinds of bonds. There's 20-year, 30-year, 10-year, 1 year. There's utilities. There are REITs. So the bonds don't move as much as stocks. But I wanted to show you this. We're going to take May 1st. We're just going to, and I'll show you this. Right there. There's May 1st, approximately. So don't hold me to that. Then you're going to see the bond market May 1st was right here. So theoretically, funds need to sell stocks and buy bonds, especially if the market was way up this morning. So especially if the market was way up this morning. But theoretically, they have to buy bonds and sell stocks because they're loaded up with stocks. The problem with that, of thinking you can play that, is number one, funds don't have to sell at the last minute. They can sell all week. A lot of times they start on Wednesdays. 2 days prior to the end of the month. Number two, you have all these buybacks. So if you have a fund selling $500 million worth of Visa, well, you saw Visa has a $4 billion buyback. So it can affect it, but not as much as when it's in the buyback blackout. So here, let me share this with you. There. And keep in mind with the JP Morgan collar, it's not all cut and dry. The markets have to go where that is because the collar that they do is against long stocks. They're massively long stocks. And the collar is just a hedge. So, that's, I see it work and the strike prices work as dealers have to do things. But I'm just telling you, when the market's going down, if the collar looks great, their fund is going down in price because they're long a lot of things. At least that's how it looks to me. So what else are we going to do? Well, number one, I wanted to show you that. And number two, what I wanted to show you, and I'm sure there's going to be somebody asking about TLT, and I'm just telling you, I'm not going to talk about TLT. There are other people trading that. But what I wanted to show you, was there a disparity like this in a time when it was buyback blackout time? That's probably what you want to know. So it's hard to find one. This is a big disparity. You don't usually see this much of a disparity. But if you want to go back, Like I said, bearish news, or let's say a bearish rebalance, is more likely to affect markets in the buyback blackout time. So let's see if we can find one. Let's go back here. And like I said, it's not at the last minute. So, and after all this, I want to show you about companion stocks, and I want to show you about correlated indexes, because it's worked. But getting back to it, when was the last time that the bond market, and I'm taking TLT because I'm taking non-24 hour. So I'm taking the SPX and the TLT. So the first thing you'll probably want to know, where else was there a disparity? So you got to look at like when the bond market got hammered. That's how I do it. So you just go into here and look at when the bond market got hammered. And then you know, the stock market tends to always go up, but yeah, how many bought on the way down here? You weren't happy. You know, you got to know how to play both sides of the market, like you saw this morning. So when was the last time in a buyback blackout where there was a big disparity? So how about here in July? Did the stock market go up? Well, it only went up to July 17th. No, not, it was unchanged. I look for a spike here and a spike down in here. So this kind of disparity, like you're seeing now, is very rare. I haven't seen it in a long time, but you get that in buyback time where you get that disparity. Here was one. Look at that. Bond market got toasted last September, October, November. So what happened over here? Yeah, the stock market went down till November. So even though the bond market was still going down into here, the stock market started going up. That's because of buybacks. I'm telling you, it matters. So it does matter. So did it go down at the end of the month? Yeah, because you still had the buyback blackout. But the beginning of November, the market's kicked in gear. So just wanted to let you know that. So you might ask, well, what do you think now? Well, I think that you got to watch correlated indexes. That's number one. Number two, like I said, funds can gradually do it. So you can't just blindly say the markets are going to go down, but just play the charts. Holy cow. Look at the chart this morning. If you were playing the ES, there were two great times to short it. One of them was prior to the opening. That's a Brecher ledge right here, where you have a sell-off, a consolidation. And here was a Brecher ledge. We played it. So we played the downside. Now I have to watch other correlated stuff because I just don't see the trade in here. Don't see the trade at the moment. There were trades earlier. We have some positions on, and that's about it. Just don't have that much on right here. So what are we doing? Well, I'll show you. So number one, correlated indexes. So you see the Dow Jones commodities down here. One of the correlated things I watch is, do the commodities go up? When they're going down, usually the bond market has a bounce. That's what you're seeing. So I'll show you some of the correlated indexes. So I like showing the correlated indexes. So number one, what are things keying off of? Every day they key off different things. Right now, I think they're keying off the Nikkei, which didn't really bounce. See that? And the Russell, which didn't really bounce. So we're talking about these sold off, before the ES sold off this morning. The ES was up 90. So what else happened? Well, you'd think if there aren't tariffs, the dollar would soar. Instead, the dollar went down. In fact, the dollar's on its low for the day. So the key in here is when you see that, it doesn't give you warm fuzzies about the broad market. But, and this is a big but, you got the buybacks. So it's not going to be as severe, any kind of disparity. That's the problem. Like this morning, the market got hammered. Well, not this morning, after that, and came right back. And that's because their companies are pressing that button like playing a video game. I mean, that's how it looks to me. So right now, what do you do for the end of the day? Well, I'm telling you, if the Russell stays here, like down fractionally, and the Dow stays down, and you got the apples, as you see, it's miraculously staying up. So, you got Visa miraculously staying up. Then I think you play the downside at the very end of the day. Doesn't mean right now, but the very end of the day. That's what I'm going to do. And like I said, that doesn't mean right now. I'm seeing if there's anything else I want to do right now. Not really. So I don't see the trade at the moment. That's all. Don't see the trade. So I'm not doing a lot in here. I don't want to do a lot yet. So I just think those buybacks are a big deal. So, and everybody's keen, I think, off the Russell. So if the Russell goes up, yeah, I think that markets are going to hold. So you can't just say, oh, there's, rebalance. I don't agree with that at this time of year when you have this rebalance, when you have buybacks. So it doesn't mean you have to go straight up, but just sell-offs are usually truncated. That's the way I look at it. So that's what I'm doing. Now, another thing, we're long some of these smaller stocks. And I'm telling you, when we're talking about companion stocks, so I'm talking about the dollar and the Nikkei and the Russell. As you see, when these bounced, when the dollar bounced, yeah, guess what? The Russell bounced and everything bounced. So you see what happened. Well, I got another one for you. And like I said, it's not when they end. It's a preponderance. It's 5 weeks prior to that's why I showed you that chart. It's 5 weeks prior to an individual stock's earnings. But the preponderance of them are around the middle of June. So really about June 22nd. Every stock is different, though. I can't stress that enough. Every stock is different. So I see that the time is skipping here. I'm going to have to exit Thinkorswim on this one. And like I said, every stock is different. That's why I showed the graphics from earlier. So, what else are we going to do in here? Well, like I said, buybacks do matter, and they especially matter when, if everything else is starting to bounce. So, if the dollar's bouncing and the bonds are bouncing and the Russell's bouncing, then markets are less likely to go down. That's all it means to me. And as you see, when it takes that long, that's because it's locking up. So just want to let you know that. So unfortunately, so if you ever want to know, watch the time. If it skips, as you see, it's skipping. So that means something's delayed. So a lot of times when I dual broadcast, that happens. That's why I can't triple broadcast. And when it gets like this, I have to go to Task Manager and just exit. And then re-enter, unfortunately. So just give me a second to redo it. So I'm trying to get back in now. And hope it works. So I'm getting everything loaded in here. So that's where I am right now. So I just want to show you that, like I said, it's 5 weeks prior to earnings and it's voluntary. So just because they're not buying back stock doesn't mean markets are going down. I just want to make that clear. Doesn't mean at all that markets are going down. It just means that bad news is more likely to tank the markets. Rebalance is more likely to tank the markets. That's all it means. No more, no less. So I just want to make that clear when it comes to that. And so on the close, I'm very interested in playing the downside. But the point is, you don't do it now because you don't know from where. That's always the wild card. So you don't know from where. So, I mean, maybe the ES is up 50. You don't know yet. So that's the whole like shebang when it comes to that. So you just don't know. Now, theoretically, I would think the ES does sell off a little, but on the close. And like I said, not sure from where. That's always the key. You're not sure from where. So I definitely think it could. I just, like I said, I know it's a broken record, but you just don't know from where. And I'm looking to see if there's something else I can do in here, but I don't see it. Not yet. Now, let me just tell you, I'm watching this carefully. I'm watching the bonds on their high. I'm watching the Russell refuses to go down. I'm watching the Nikkei, the Japanese market, refuse to go down. Now, you might say, why the heck do you have the Japanese market? Because similar charts have similar outcomes. And it's had a very similar chart. So you take the Nikkei here on a daily chart, and you'll see that it failed at that resistance. Look familiar? That's the ES. That's the Japanese. The difference, this didn't even get close to there. Didn't even get close to there. So you see what happened. So to me, that made it more likely that that was going to fail. So, and that's what happened. So now what do we do? Well, I basically think that you have to watch the dollar. To me, I think foreigners are not loading up on believing there are no tariffs. So I think that's why the market's having such a muted response at the moment. At least that's how it looks to me. Well, Penn, um, if he just I'm not going to really go over it, but just go and Google, not Penn, anybody, the taco trade. So it's something that's irks some people. We'll just leave it at that. The taco trade. Go and look it up. It's pretty funny. So, but it's definitely helped the stock market. Let's put it that way. So that's what I'm watching right now. Like I said, you might have a rebalance. I would do this. Similar charts have similar outcomes. I would watch the Dow. I would watch the Russell. I would watch the dollar. So if you see the Russell start to go down, then it's more likely the other ones aren't going to explode to the upside. So, I mean, that's the way I look at it. Now, I'll tell you, I'm watching for tomorrow. I'll definitely play the Teslas of the world. Now, you might ask, why would you play a Tesla? Because if this fails on a lot of other big stocks, like let's say APP, see how it broke up? If that starts failing, if NVIDIA starts failing, I mean, they're not failing a lot, but if you see them fill the gap, then it's much more likely to me that Tesla goes back to that 350 area, that gap. So I would put up a ton of gap stocks. That's what I do. So you could go over that. See that gap? See, that had the gap 2 days ago. That's already filled it. So it's very interesting on some of these that had gaps, even Amazon. Microsoft is its own entity, but still that had a gap. So that whole thing with that like island reversal characteristic. So if you see one index or one stock that's a leader start to fill it, that would be a big warning sign. Right now, heck, they still look like bull flags. But if one fails, I think the others are going to fail. That's the way it looks to me. So that's where I am. So, and thanks for showing that, everybody. And like I said, that has definitely benefited the Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world who keep buying stocks right before there's an announcement. Go to Quiver Quantitative and you'll find a lot of this out. So just, definitely keep that in mind. So the DAX, the DAX to me hasn't worked as well. So I watch them all, but I have not seen it work as well. And I think one of the reasons is because, people are selling the dollar and maybe buying German stocks. So the German market used to matter, but now it's up in the stratosphere. I mean, it's a new high. On the other hand, the Japanese market's down here. Now, you might ask, why is the Japanese market underperforming? And the biggest reason it's underperforming is because their yields are at an all-time high. So but it's still pretty high. But that's why I'm watching the Japanese market more with the SPX. So, and I'm watching that moving average. So I'm watching that with the Russell. See the moving average. The transports, that's a 200, by the way. And these are decisively under it. So a lot of people like me are definitely, watching carefully to see if these roll back over. So if these roll back over, it's much more likely these aren't going to have that oomph. That's the way it looks to me. They're not going to have the oomph. So that's what I'm watching right now. And I'm constantly adjusting positions, by the way. So I might sell 10 shares against a position and all this, but I'm just telling you right now, this is what I'm watching, the underperformers. So I'm scanning a bunch of stuff. So if I'm silent, sorry. You see on this, you see it's under the 200. You see the Russell's under the 200. So what's that mean to me? What it means to me is they better have a bigger rally than they're having. Now, you might say it's because of the buybacks, and you're probably right. In fact, when you look at the correlation between the SPX and the Russell, they correlate a lot better when the S&P, the preponderance of them aren't buying back stock. Like I said, every stock is different, but a majority, it's like the middle of June when they're in the buyback blackout. The majority. So that's where I am right now. So I'm just telling you that imbalances do make a difference. Don't get me wrong. Imbalances make a huge difference. But I also think that buybacks are keeping everything elevated, and it's helping the bond market. Now, you might ask, why are the bonds over here up 16 and the bonds over here are up 26? Because they rolled over to the September. So on the bonds. So that's what I'm watching right now. And everything else, well, I'm going to be watching to see if this let's say this is only up 10. I'm going to see what isn't going down. And that's what I want to pound on the close that has buybacks. That would be Nvidia as a buyback, but I'm telling you, if that's the best Nvidia can do, I'll show you. Nvidia has a habit of selling off after earnings. So, especially if it's had a big rally. So, it has a habit of, let's say, staying within its expected move if it had a rally. It doesn't mean it's going down. It just means if it had a rally. So, that's why I just wanted to look to play something under the market in there. Now, the lower that goes, the more likely the NASDAQ goes down, which will pull down the ES. So I just want you to know all the factors going on. And the other thing you're probably going to see, because I've seen it a million times, you're probably going to see the puts have more of a premium in the next hour or two than the calls. And the reason is because people are worried about that 1550 thing I tell you about. That's how it looks to me. So that's how I look at it. So I think you're going to see the premium of the puts be higher than the calls because everybody has to respect that end of the month, end of the day stuff. So right now, like the puts 5 points out of the money or 860, and they're about the same right now. Nobody cares. Now, I will tell you, if we go on correlated indexes, well, the dollar's rallying, that helps. The Russell isn't rallying, that hurts. So it just seems like a non-event in here at the moment. So we have some longs, we have some shorts. That's where we are. Visa is miraculously coming back, but it's got some big buybacks. So that makes perfect sense. And the other is, regardless of the type of market you have, you're going to have rotation. So when you had this whole thing about the tariffs, the stocks that everybody says, oh, they don't care about tariffs, like the Spotify and the HubSpot and the PANW. Yeah, they go down. And then the stocks that have been forgotten go up, like the Align Technology. So I'm just telling you, you get this rotation. It's fascinating. I think it's fascinating. So I think everything with the market's fascinating, but that's the way I look at it in here. So right now, what are we looking at? And like I said, there isn't an end of the month rally. I've hardly ever seen an end of the month rally like, oh, funds have to mark up the markets, and all that. In fact, let's go over it. Like I said, rebalance is an important factor, but not in the buyback blackout time as much. But let's just go over it because there are people that say sell in May and go away. I don't agree with that. If you follow me on Stock Twitch, you'll see what I'm talking about. That is totally not true. So well, let's go over that first. The sell in May and go away. So you'll see that May is a big buyback time. Usually by the May 1st is when Apple has earnings. So the preponderance start buying back stock. Go to May 1st. What happened? Markets went up. There you go with your sell in May and go away. How about the year before? How about May? There you go. Sell in May and go away. Went straight up. So I'm just telling you, almost every May, the market goes up because of buybacks. But what buybacks were started to be legal. Give me 1 second. Buybacks started to be legal in 1982. So when you go into this and look at 1982, you'll see that we've had a secular bull market since 1982. I mean, every sell-off, you get a big, you get companies buying back. This is when buybacks were legalized. So if you go back to May before then, yeah, sell in May and go away worked because there weren't buybacks. So you'll see almost every May the markets went down. Yep, because of lack of buybacks. But now almost every May the markets go up because they buy back stock. So that thing about sell in May and go away is just not true. Same thing with end of the month buying. Well, if they're buying back stock, it's more likely to work. So let's go over it. So we're going to go to SPX. And we're going to put in on the right, left, let's say an hourly chart. And on the right, I'm going to put a 1 minute chart. And we're going to go back in here. It's a great question. So thanks for asking. And we're going to go back to the end of the month. And we're going to go a lot of months. I do this all the time. So, I sort of know the answer, but here we go. So we're going to go into, like I said, if they're buybacks, it's more likely to work. But let's just go in and see. So we're going to go to April 30. Well, we know with the whole tariff stuff, but I'll show you anyway. So what did the markets do end of the month? This is non-24 hour. It's pre-buffering on the upper left. This is the rewind function of Thinkorswim. So let's just go see. What did the markets do? Yeah, they went up at the end of the month. Well, we know that with the whole tariff thing and all that. But yeah, that day it went up. Remember, they're buying back stock. Usually they start buying like the last couple of days in April, which is what worked. So let's take the month before. So March 31st, guess what? Yeah, you're in the buyback blackout. So let's see. Yeah, markets didn't go up. They went up a little, not a lot. I wouldn't call that a lot. They went up a little, but net, they were down. Look at that. Net, they were down. So how about the month before? So I don't see much of the end of the month stuff, but in buyback time, sure, you could see it. There, guess what? Yeah, they were buying back stock. So it's amazing that the end of the month going up is much more likely when they're buybacks. So just keep that in the back of your mind. I think that's a big deal. So that's what I'm watching. So definitely, if they're not buying back stock, you're more likely not to have an end of the month thing. There, like that. They were in the buyback blackout. So it's just amazing. So this month, yeah, the end of the month, you have some rebalance, but they can buy back stock and sop up some of the supply. So that's what happens. Now, if you ever want to know, are there like rebalance? Goldman Sachs estimates 18 billion to sell, but they don't have to sell the last day of the month. They can work it off all week. That's why a lot of times you just see every rally truncated because there's some rebalancing, but the market doesn't get blasted because of buybacks. So there are two opposing forces in here. So that's what I see. So definitely you see sell in May and go away. Don't agree. End of the month rally, more likely when they can buy back stock. End of the month rally, when there's a rebalance, less likely. So there's all these moving parts. I would rather just look at charts. So like this, what the heck does that tell you? That's slop. Is it a bull flag? Is it a bear flag? It's nothing. When it gets like that, you just don't trade it. If you see a bear flag back here, sure, you can trade it. If you see a bull flag, like an inverse head and shoulders, you can buy it. If you see a bear flag, you sell it. But right now, this is telling you nothing. That's the problem. So then you're like, well, is there another index that would show me a better tell? Yeah. If that rallies right here, yeah, that's going to help sentiment in the ES. On the other hand, and that's what I'm telling you, it's like I'm going over 8 million things out loud. I'm looking at them and it's driving me crazy because the NASDAQ's selling off because of NVIDIA. So, there's a lot of differing moving parts, and tells can change intraday. So if you see NVIDIA selling off, then people aren't going to care as much about the dollar. Right now, they're going to care about NVIDIA. And if NVIDIA sells off, it'll pull down the NASDAQ, which will keep a lid on the ES. So I'm trying to quantify this all for you as well as I can. So these are the moving parts I see today. I see NVIDIA. And by the way, this is another thing, and I'd love to go over it. So in answer to your question about the sell in May and go away, I don't believe in that. On the last day of the month, when they buy back stock, yeah, you could have a pop unless bonds have underperformed for the month. Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts. So I just don't go on like an automatic thing like that. I mean, at least I can't with that. Now, NVIDIA has a big buyback. Why doesn't it go up? Just hasn't. I'll show you what we're talking about. Go and look at NVIDIA with earnings. All these earnings. what are you going to notice? When it rallies into earnings, it usually has a reversal. Look at this. Rallies into earnings and it just crapped out. How about this one? It sold off into earnings and then rallied. How about this one? Sold off into earnings or consolidated and kept going. So a lot of it has to do with its price action prior to earnings. This time the price action was straight up. That's why I thought the response, it could go up, but it wasn't going to go up that much. So now the problem is, still looks good on a chart. Other times when it's had a reversal, it had that. A big red candle. That's big. That's different. We don't have that yet. So I just don't see the trade in there in NVIDIA because it still looks good on a chart. If it looked like that, where it tested that and had the reversal, yeah, then I'd look at it as a bearish idea. But it's above everything. So I wanted to do a spread under the market for next week, but boy, I just don't have enough reasons. If there were other stocks like that are high flyers that had gigantic reversals, then I'd be more apt to do something under the market. But we don't have that. So, and you might ask about NVIDIA. Can you look at that tip ranks thing? So did NVIDIA buy back a lot of stock? So let's go look. This is the last quarter. Remember, last quarter, yeah, 7 billion. Look at that. But that was for January. It's a different earnings season. Look how much it bought back. But I'm telling you right now, of what I've seen with NVIDIA, it more has to do with what the price action was prior to earnings. So I just think NVIDIA is going to be a non-event. My problem is I don't know how it's going to trade tomorrow or next week. So I don't have enough of an edge. Like I said, if it had this kind of reversal like APP and was back in a zone, darn right I'd play something neutral. But the problem is NVIDIA is up here. How am I going to play something neutral? I can't. Because on the one hand, maybe it goes up to here. On the other hand, if it fills the gap, then I'm doing a neutral. I'll lose money being right. So I don't have the answer at the moment. And that's where I am. Now, I'll show you some future trades that I like. So one of my favorite things is oversold in an uptrend. So what was oversold in an uptrend? Well, let's take something. Microsoft. Uptrend, short-term uptrend, oversold in an uptrend. So as you see, there are other people playing Meta, no opinion. I don't want to step on anybody else's toes. Sorry. But there are a lot of people playing Meta on the other sites. I'm not going to step on their toes. What do I think? I think they have a buyback. So if you want to know, do they? Go and look at 1550 and see if it's been selling off every day. It did here. It did here. So to me, they're probably buying back stock. What's it look like intraday? Well, if it holds here, it could go up by that amount, but I'm watching that hourly red candle. If that doesn't hold, then, that's what I wanted to see in NVIDIA. Theoretically, I would much rather go and do a neutral for Meta next week when I see that kind of thing. Yeah, I tell you, I'm not going to talk about it. Now I talk about it. Thanks a lot, Jonathan. But no, all kidding aside, That's what you're looking for. So you know they have a buyback, so it's probably going to hold up because you could see the buyback because every day it sells off at 15.50 when they can't buy back. The other thing you'll probably see, Jonathan, is the low every day is probably the opening because you can't buy the opening print. Look at that. That one, well, today was sort of an anomaly, but a lot of days the opening is the low. Look at that. I'm just telling you, I've seen it a million times. So if this doesn't hold, I'd be more likely to play that under the market for next week. But I worry, you see it on a daily. Maybe it has a red candle on a 5-minute, an hourly, but is it really a reversal on a daily? No. The only reason that you could play it to the downside, the only reason is because you have a backstop. That's all. So, Jonathan, on what I'm seeing though, is when would I say, yeah, it's a layup? We got to play it to the downside. Look at Meta here, and now look at Amazon. Is there any difference? Well, to me, yeah. The difference is this isn't even close to, it seems like it's multiple layers of resistance. They're actually relatively similar. The only reason I play Amazon over Meta is Amazon doesn't have the amount of buybacks. If you ever want to know, same thing. Just go into your handy, put Amazon in here. They don't have one. Last one was 2022. So darn right, if I had the choice, Jonathan, I'd much rather play Amazon over Meta because Amazon doesn't have a buyback and Meta does. So, that's why I'd rather do it that way, if that makes sense. So, now, like I said, though, sure, maybe you get a gap up, but now let me just show you. I'm not going to show you the trend. Well, it's the same spot, but that's why we played Amazon for next week, for exactly that reason. There, we're playing Amazon for next week, betting on it staying in this zone. And sure, I worry because theoretically I should have done a 10 wide. I should have done this one. So that's a better one than what I did. We did this one. Yeah, we did that for like 210. But theoretically, yeah, I might be too right. At least if you do a 10-point wide, that protects you to 199.5. So I don't mind that. Because even on good news, in fact, that's another thing, Jonathan, that you'd probably like. I go on equal and opposite reactions. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, you know about the panic on the downside in the ES or mine's a panic at the disco. So we're talking about this panic. This panic. So you had the bloop. So you had the panic, the constant downtrend in the whoosh. Well, I'm wondering if this was the constant uptrend in the whoosh, because theoretically, in the grand scheme of things, if there aren't tariffs, isn't all the good news out? So, that's we'll see. But to me right now, if I'm going to play something to the downside, I'd rather play something that's at resistance and doesn't have buybacks. So that would be Amazon, because I really worry about Meta, because it's a different animal, it seems like to me. So, I mean, that's how I look at it. Now, we played Visa, and I'm not real thrilled that Visa's come back now. We might have to just get out. So, in there. But that's why I like Amazon, because there's similar charts and the stock is just, it's already factored in a lot of the tariff stuff. So, and the other thing, and I got to tell you, I think it's sort of significant that Apple is crapping out even with that there might not be tariffs. I mean, it's on its low for the day. That doesn't give you warm fuzzies. So I would have thought that would be, I mean, last night we had a butterfly on. It looked like it was worthless, and we came out ahead. I mean, like a miracle. So if I'm going to play these, I'd rather play Amazon. In fact, what are you noticing on this little uptick in the NASDAQ? Meta went up, Amazon didn't. Yeah, it's not a coincidence. So that's the way I look at it. So that's why I look at that. Now, Apple, yeah, it's had a million downgrades. Just keep in mind, if you're talking about a downgrade, I have another trick for you. Go to Apple. Are you talking about Apple at a downgrade? Is that right? Go to tip ranks. I'm telling you, it works. So if Apple had a downgrade, go to tip ranks and see if that person has a good rating. I'm not sure where, well, I wish I could see it in here. But I'm just telling you, go to tip ranks then of whomever that name is. So let's just show you. So just go to tip ranks. This is free. I haven't even logged in. And whomever the person is, like, there's Apple. So take, you see, some of these are a lot better than others. Dan Ives, he's great. So success rate, though, before you say I'm just blindly buying whatever he buys, his success rate is 53%. My dog, who's named Moxie, her success rate is 50%. So just, average return 6 per rating. So, just keep that in mind. But I would go into these people. So whomever you find, let's say it was Dan Ives. So let's go back to this. Just put in Ives. Put in whomever you see did the upgrade. There. And it'll tell you their rating. So whomever it is, just put in their rating. You wonder if Kathy Wood's in here, but it's not really she's more a fund manager. I don't know if she's in there. Let's see. There she is. There's her portfolio gain. So do you really want to just buy whatever she's buying? Isn't that amazing? So, like I said, I don't trade earnings. I mean, I'm not trying to be corny about that, but I just don't like trading earnings. I just can't stress that enough. I was, and I know you've heard it before, but a lot haven't. I was in the IBM pit for 8 years and I traded earnings zero. I mean, you see it with NVIDIA. Heck, you could have faded the calls on the open and stock refused to go up. So I try not to play earnings. So now you might say, well, maybe Dan Ives likes it. Yeah, that's possible. But I'll tell you another thing, and I'm still working on with Spot Gamma of just reading their videos, is to see if there's unusual activity. We've seen it a million times on these things with unusual activity. Dell. So what do you see in Dell? Do we see any unusual activity? Keep in mind that when the Robinhood effect, you've seen it on 8 million sites. They always are buying calls. Hardly anybody ever buys puts. If you see unusual puts versus calls, that's a big deal with earnings. So I just, can't stress that enough. So let me show you what we're talking about. So here are the earnings tonight. Let's go over them. So here's earnings Thursday night, and it's an art, not a science. So I look at two things. I do not look at call sizzle for unusual, like if there's rumor takeover, sure, I'll look at something, not for earnings. I put the put sizzle, which is the amount of puts relative to normal, and I'll do the put call ratio. You want more puts than calls. So here you go, Elastic. Yeah, well, this is a stretch showing you this one, but I'll show you anyway. I've been waiting to say that. 3,000 puts, 1,300 calls. Not bad. That sticks out like a sore thumb, those June 90s. Look at that. So that might be unusual put activity. Let's take another one. How about American Eagle's a tough one because it's only $11 stock. So how about Dell? The puts and calls pretty similar, and the more put calls than puts. You want the ones that have more puts than calls. At least that's the way I look at it. So are there any that have, well, believe it or not, Costco has more puts than calls. Not by much. So that's what I'm going to be watching. Now, Amazon, like I said, I think they're keying off NVIDIA. NVIDIA doing that, market's probably going down. They're keying off the NVIDIA. You could see it. So you see, what are they keying off of? They're keying off NVIDIA. They're not keying off the Nikkei. They're keying off the NVIDIA. So, and what went down? Meta did go down. Amazon went down. Tesla, we just talked about. So the two that are big stalwarts are the NVIDIA and the Tesla. So now you might say, well, why is Amazon going down? Because of the NASDAQ. But why isn't Microsoft? Yeah, probably buybacks. Yesterday, we bought cheap puts at the close and got out of them. So I'm just telling you, that's how we're going to try to play. Going to try to play this stuff later. So now, Costco. Well, like I said, I love going over this stuff with Costco. You're right. But here we go again. What is Costco done? And, like I said, I love going over this. I'm telling you, though, Amazon, I'm not as happy about what I did because I'm worried about this little twerk right there, the 200. So I might get out of what I'm in, and I might go and do a 10-point wide for next week. Or like Mitch does on our site very successfully, I might go and sell for next week like a 215 put and a 190 put, something like that. Might do that as well. And you were right, by the way, Mitch, if you're in here about Amazon going to 205, great call on your part. So that's where I am. So, but let's go back to it about Costco. I think it's a great idea to look at it. Like I said, number one, don't go on a holy grail that just because somebody says something. That's number one. So that's you got to be careful with that. But you're right in here. But look at that. It rallied into earnings. Massive rally into earnings. So it definitely matters on what the prior move was. So let's go and show you. So here, rallied into earnings. I mean, from here to here. Every one of these, it rallied into earnings. Every one. This one didn't rally into earnings. Not as much. Look at that. It just consolidated for a week. So if it rallies into earnings, yeah, it's a sale. But here it rallied into earnings and went straight up on earnings. Went straight up on earnings here after it sold off prior to earnings. So this time, it hasn't done anything. Now, there is a problem, and I would not mess around with Costco. You always worry about them splitting the stock. So I will not play Costco overnight. I'm happy to play Costco tomorrow after their meeting and all that stuff. Then I'll do it, sure. But not now. So now let's go over a couple of other things. So Walmart, does Walmart move with Costco? It's another great question. Not really, but I mean, sometimes, yeah. Let's just go and look. So like I said, if Costco rallies into earnings, it usually is more of a muted response. But I don't know what Kramer's smoking, because it sure seems to me that always is a strong word. Here it went down a teeny bit. Here it went down because after a rally, and that was only a teeny bit. In fact, it rallied on earnings, went down 2 days later. This one, it sold off on earnings, sure. But I'm just telling you that it sold off. Here it rallied. Here it rallied. So it's about 50-50. Now, you have a good question about Walmart. Now, I want to show you something sort of neat. I don't know if you know this is available. Go into remove every study. Just remove every study. Here's your Costco. Go into studies again and go add study and compare with. And put Walmart in there. It's a great question on your part. What has it done? So go and look, and you're going to see that when it sold off, Walmart sold off. When it sold off, look at that. You're right. You're right. Look at that. So in answer your question, that they do correlate pretty well. Let's go back to here. Yeah, not bad. This time it had a massive rally and Walmart did nothing, but it didn't go down. I mean, we'll give it that. This time when it had a big rally, so did Walmart. So you're right. So then you might say, well, why don't we play something neutral in Walmart because Costco rallied into earnings? Nah, the problem with Walmart, it just doesn't have a lot of, you'll see. Walmart doesn't have a lot of premium? It's a really good question. Now, you might say, what else compares with Costco and Walmart? Nah, not much. So, and like I said, I use different moving averages than other people. And also, one thing that's a mantra for me is a moving average doesn't act as support. I mean, look at this. Where has a moving average mattered? If you take off everything, it sure seems like hindsight to me. I just think you need 3 reasons. I don't know about you, but it sure didn't work in here. So it worked here. And why did it work here? Because in an uptrend, a stock has a habit of going back to the 20. That's different. It was in an uptrend. So a lot of times they get too extended and they sort of rest so they can catch up. In here, that's a tough one. So it's just a tough one to me. So that's a tough one. And like I said, whether you use a 20 SMA, a 21 EMA, I would use it in conjunction with other stuff. That's what I do. So you're right. Hey, heck, you're right. Sure looks like a consolidation to me. But you saw, though, that Amazon has a consolidation and it's starting to reverse. So Costco, consolidation, maybe. In fact, if you put it side by side, is Walmart really going to break up if it follows Costco a lot? If Costco breaks down, is Walmart more likely to break up? No. So to me, it's all percentages. So I hope that makes sense for you. It's all about percentages. And by the way, somebody asked, was I surprised the China gap didn't fill? It did fill on a lot of things, but it wasn't the fill. It's another great question. It wasn't that it had to fill the China gap. A lot of indexes only went to the bottom of the candle, the body. Go on the right and look at the transports. They did the same thing. They went to the body. That's all they did. So I didn't think, it could overshoot and fill the gap, but I've been watching the transports real carefully. And when the transports only went to the bottom of the candle, I just thought that was about it. So, I mean, that's how I looked at it. So now Amazon, I'm getting a little nervous. Like I said, if NVIDIA sells off, it's going to pull down the NASDAQ because people are keen off the NVIDIA in here. So when you're getting the troika, the NVIDIA selling off, now the dollar's selling off, now the Russell's selling off. So there isn't any reason to buy the markets here. So, and the Tesla's selling off. We just called Tesla too. So let's go back into here. Now, here's another one. The old sell on rumor, buy on news. How long has this gone up because people think that Musk is coming back to? It's gone up a lot. Well, guess what? He announced he's coming back. So another one of those buy. What's going to be the best news now? Well, I'm not sure. So I'm just telling you that it seems like the best news is out. But I got to tell you also, there are so many stocks that have these patterns where they look like a bull flag and then that. In fact, we were talking about after a parabolic move up, you usually don't get a V top. You get a test of the high. So, I mean, which Meta hasn't done yet. So I'm watching Tesla. I'm watching NVIDIA. If these fail, if these get back into this area, then I think it's a given that a lot of other ones will as well. So hope that helps you. And I got to get going. And I hope that helped. So take care. Thanks for the great questions.